to Pathways to Healing, the Perfect Step podcast. We are your hosts, Cody Norman
and Logan Frye, paralysis recovery specialist at the Perfect Step, also known as TPS.
We are not doctors and are not prescribing anything, as this podcast is for informational purposes and should not be considered legal advice.
We are, however, sharing knowledge and experience that we have gained from working for years with clients in the paralysis community.
The guests on this podcast will include either experts in their respective fields or individuals sharing their unique experiences with paralysis.
Suggestions and advice that we share may affect each person differently, as not one injury or diagnosis is the exact same.
We are hopeful that the outreach of this podcast will allow us to give help and guidance for individuals suffering from paralysis.
We understand that this spread of knowledge is important and takes an entire community coming together.
Because of this, we would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who have made this possible. If you said something...
Hello, and welcome back to Pathways to Healing, the TPS podcast. On episode 9, Cody and I covered a plethora of different topics that you don't want to miss.
These topics included our personal background, how we got into the field of health and fitness, our desire to learn about the body and the way the body works, our desire to help individuals who have lesser circumstances, as well as things that we have learned from being in the paralysis community for years. Stay tuned on Pathways to Healing.
Alrighty, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to Pathways to Healing, the Perfect Step podcast, with other host Cody.
How's it going?
Fantastic. How you doing today, man?
Doing great. I'm excited. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for me and you to kind of let the viewers and listeners know our background, where we came from, and how we got into our position. I don't think we talked about it a little bit in the intro episode, but we really didn't do a deep dive. So I'm excited for it.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we want to make it very clear to everybody that in this podcast, we are not professionals that are, prescribing advice to anybody. This is something that is going to be logistics, but opinion based a lot of the time. So everything that we do say on this podcast, take it with a grain of salt. And we're just going to have some fun and share a little bit of our story and dive into, different topics of how we're specialists, how we got into that position and role, where we came from, our background, why we love exercise so much. And why don't you start off a little bit about who you are and how you got into this field?
Yeah, so obviously Cody Norman, from Northern California. I grew up in the Bay Area-ish. I got into the field because of a family member, definitely. My mom got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was younger, and that kind of increased the infatuation with trying to understand the body, trying to understand the mind, how the body works, even the parts that we can't see. And it pushed me into the education field of kinesiology, which is what we both studied in college, as well as psychology, kind of trying to understand the mental components of everything as well. And we got into kinesiology. We both just got the opportunity to learn about the body and increase our understanding. We're two people who got lucky enough to get very similar amounts of information when we're in a world now that there's so much information out there. I think, learning is very easy, but also very hard at the same time, because you have to try to dissect which pieces of information are good and which ones are true and that type of thing. But, we both got to study kinesiology, learn about the body, learn about how the body works. And we got introduced into this organization through school, again, through a field trip. We took our first trip to what was Project Walk, and, got to see what they were doing over there and became more interested. I think being in the field of physical therapy or recovery comes from the athletic perspective, definitely. But we just, like I said, just got the opportunity to learn and increase our understanding of how the body works, and got lucky enough to come on to a recovery center that focused on neurological injuries. I think both of us had a very big interest in understanding the nervous system, the brain, how the brain and the body both connect, and just kept learning and got placed here. And we still, every single day, are working with clients or doing research or something like that. We're just two individuals who keep getting the opportunity to learn, and now we're trying to do our best to push what we have learned in that experience to individuals who we think the information could be useful for.
And there's a lot of people that it could be useful for, including ourselves.
for sure.
Yeah. Let me ask you a little bit about this because you mentioned psychology. Was that your minor?
Initially, I was going to do physical therapy, right? And
Mhm.
as part of physical therapy school, you have to take certain classes that are prerequisites to get into the doctorate program or the master's program or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And I ended up taking a lot of psychology classes for the PT schools that I was applying for or planning to apply for. And I loved them. Like they were just so interesting to me, figuring out all these different ways that the brain, the way we think, affects the body. Right? You take abnormal
Mhm.
psychology and you learn about all these different mental illnesses and what they really are, different chemical mechanisms in the brain that are not working what we would call properly,
Mhm.
and they're causing these different effects in the body and how the brain can change the way the body reacts. And being somebody from an athletic perspective, our whole job as being a college athlete was figuring out ways to maximize the body's efficiency.
Mhm.
Right? If we're both baseball players, if you're a pitcher, your job is to figure out how your body, whatever you have, mass, speed, all those different things, how you can perform a physical task at the most efficient way possible.
Mhm.
And the way you have to do that is you have to figure out ways to maximize your physical body. And so, being a pitcher, we wanted to learn about the body, learn how it works, can we be the most effective with it. And I kept learning that, well, the brain affects the body.
Mhm.
So if we can not only do everything to control the body, but figure out ways to learn about the brain and how the way we think or what we do with our thought process is going to change our body. That's a big thing that I think a lot of people missed out on, and why it kind of allowed us to have success was we placed an emphasis on the mental component.
Mhm. I think that mental component is thought about a lot, but I don't think that the mental component is associated with the physical component enough, if that makes
It
sense.
does, and I agree. I think a lot of people think the physical body and the way we think or the brain is totally different, but I just would have to disagree. I think they're both connected, and
Right.
I think we're learning that through science. It's really cool to see a lot of the published or the studies that have been published recently about physiology and the body's mechanisms and how the way we think can affect those.
Mhm.
There's a great study, I believe it's out of Stanford, and it is what they call like the milkshake study. Right? You have a
Mhm.
population, and you separate them to two different groups. One group you go in and you tell them that this milkshake is this really indulgent, rich milkshake, and they go and they drink it, and you track their ghrelin levels, the hormone that controls how hungry you are, and then they go in later and you tell them, okay, it's like this low calorie, very light milkshake, and again you track the ghrelin levels, and what you see is the ghrelin levels are affected by what they are told and the way they are thinking about the milkshake. But in both cases, it was the same exact milkshake. It
Mhm.
had nothing different in the way it was made. It was the same exact milkshake. Just what they were told changed the way that their body reacted, and that's just so cool. And I think science can
Mhm.
finally start to prove these things that a lot of us thought for a really long time about how the body and the brain and all of that is connected. But now
Mhm.
we're starting to see it and it's traceable, which I think is great.
I think it's fantastic because that's something that you can't see visibly, right? Like you can't see thoughts, you can't see a perception visibly. But that kind of ties into how holistic our training is here at TPS, and especially the nervous system training aspect of TPS is that we are asking our clients to connect their brain to their body using the central nervous system. And, in PNR or pattern neural activity recruitment, what we use in our nervous system training, a lot of that looks like something different from somebody that is a perspective from sitting in the chairs, maybe over the front door. But I think when we start to explain what it is that we're trying to accomplish on the table and how we're trying to get clients to organize and activate the nervous system in a certain sense, without being able to picture that and see a mental image of that, we want them to really think about how they can create that. And it goes without saying, but without being able to grasp onto that physically, we want them to really think about connecting back those synapses and neurons from their brain to their body using our table work, using us as an extension of the nervous system. So I think that's something that comes in really importance for us in our job, and it's something that I don't think a lot of people really know a ton about yet.
Welcome to the Be Perfect Foundation, a beacon of hope for those living with paralysis. We're a nonprofit organization on a mission to make a difference in the lives of hundreds of fathers, mothers, siblings, and friends. We provide direct financial and emotional aid. From medical necessities to guidance and support, we're here to help individuals on their road to recovery. With nearly $10 million raised and a 100% volunteer staff, your support goes a long way. Visit BePerfectFoundation.org to donate or find out how you can get involved. The Be Perfect Foundation, changing perceptions daily.
No, definitely not. I think from the outside perspective, when you walk into the building, it can just look like somebody's, are you just doing stretches?
Stretching, yeah.
And no, absolutely not. We're trying to get the client to understand and engage that the whole thought process here is that the brain and the body are connected, and we can use that in a type of neurological training to create potential benefit. And I think that's exactly what we believe, and I think it's had good results so far.
Yeah.
I think you can give a great background on that, but if you want to first talk about, again, your background and how you got into the field.
Yeah, definitely. Kinesiology itself, I actually wanted to be a chiropractor. I'm not sure if I told you this or you know that, but I wanted to be a chiropractor at first when I went to Laverne, and I initially had my major as kinesiology. And the reason was because I was so infatuated with the body. I was so interested in what the body does, and not only what it does, but how it works and how it is connected to the brain. And that's so crazy how I ended up at this place, because I never even thought about that at that time. I was more interested in exercise components, chiropractic especially components, but never thought about how the nervous system works until I got to Laverne, until I started learning more about kinesiology and taking those certain classes, just like that class that we took. If I remember correctly, it was a kinesiology class we took sophomore year that we met and we started talking a little bit more and went into TPS, Foundations of Kinesiology, correct? Yeah, Foundations of Kinesiology. And that class started to open my eyes about the different foundations of just kines in general and how the body moves, how the body works. And I think it's at that moment in time where I realized, wow, like this is really fascinating and I really love this. And this is something that I could see myself doing, because my goal in my life has always been to help people. It's always been how can I help somebody to achieve, to be the best person that they possibly can be? How can they be the best version of themselves? And that's why I love this job so much too, is because this job, it gives me an opportunity and an advantage to be able to be with somebody one-on-one every single day and see how the training that we're going through using TPS's methodology, how we're going through that training is allowing me to try to get them to buy in and to commit to the process. That way that they can eventually possibly get the results, right? Exactly. We always tell our clients, we're going to work on this. We're going to do PNR. We're going to do exercise-based therapy. We're going to do load bearing. Are the results guaranteed? Absolutely not. Right? Nothing is absolutely guaranteed, but we do this because we've seen people get the results. We've seen people buy into the process. And so I fell in love with that aspect of it. And I think baseball at Laverne really taught me that a lot too, is it's not just about the result at the end of the day, it's about the process of how to get there. So like I said, started off at Laverne, kinesiology major.
Not to cut you off, but to give a quick background on that class that we were in for kinesiology, what the class was essentially was a class where you go in and the professor brings in different professionals from different fields of that field of kinesiology. So we had chiropractors come in, physical therapists, occupational therapist, speech therapist. We got taken to what was now our job of a paralysis neurological recovery center. Anything that you could think of that had to do with the kinesiology field, coaching, teaching, whatever it was. And that class was all about trying to find out which career path you wanted to go into in the field of kinesiology.
Yeah. And that was a great class. That was something where I was able to really figure out what path I wanted to take. And I think actually it was that class where I changed from chiropractic into physical therapy. And that's when I decided, okay, maybe I want to go to school for physical therapy. Maybe I want to apply for a DPT program or something of that sort. And then I actually changed that route to strength and conditioning. And I really fell in love with that because of we have such a great strength coach at Laverne.
Thank
Coach
you, Matt
Durant,
Durant.
shout out, man. He
Changed our
changed my
lives.
life and changed my perspective on lifting, not only about kinesiology and the body and how it moves, but also with the camaraderie of it and the team building atmosphere of doing that. That really changed my perspective in my whole life of doing it for the guy next to you, not just doing it for yourself. And that's the whole team building aspect. I think that falls into the selflessness of what I try to attack here at TPS is I'm not doing, this for myself. We're doing it for the clients. We're doing it for the people. And then having that class with Michaela, like you said, that really helped me to think about there's so many other options out there. I'm not limited. I'm not limited to just physical therapy. I'm not limited to just chiropractic. I'm not limited to just strength and conditioning. There's so many other options that are out there with kinesiology and with other majors too, not just kines, but there's so many other fields that you can dive and get into. And
You can be an
then,
entrepreneur in any of the
yeah,
fields that you go to study.
no,
Right.
yeah. And then realizing that is when I took the next step and found this place. And thankfully so, now we're here today.
Yeah,
So,
and I think all of us here at the facility are grateful that you're here and you chose this path.
likewise.
Why don't you talk about going into how learning about different exercises and learning about strength and conditioning from Durant, how all of those things have changed or affected your ability to train people here?
Yeah, for sure. Seeing an example like Coach Durant, seeing an example like Coach Senyo, like Coach Gates and Coach D'Lo, and so many other coaches that we've had when we were there, they put into my perspective of what coaching is and how to coach somebody effectively, how to coach somebody respectfully, but how to make sure that you're pushing that person in a proper way and not only pushing each person the same or coaching each person the same, but coaching that individual how they need to be coached. And that goes on to our one-on-one training that we do here because I'm not going to train my 11 a.m. client the same as I train my 4 p.m. client, right? Especially if they have different body types, but not even talking about the physical aspect, but talking about the mental and cognitive aspect as well.
Whole different populations, right? We
Correct.
we mainly have only had on people with spinal cord injuries, but the
Right.
facility we see all types of different neurological disorders from
Mm.
stroke, brain injury, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, PLS, ALS,
Right.
ones that people had never probably even heard of Friedrich's ataxia, or um, so many others.
A plethora of neurological disorders.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's like we have learned that you literally can't train every single individual the same.
Right. And that's how the training is here at TPS. And that's what they taught me as well is I'm Logan, you're Cody. They're going to train us differently based off who we are, maybe what our ability is, maybe even who we are at Laverne as a baseball player, right? And those kind of things affected me in such a positive way where I was able to kind of attach on to some of them and ask them questions, and not only them but also professors I had at Laverne too, and other mentors I was able to link onto that taught me a good amount of information that made me into the trainer that I am today or the specialist that I am today. Being a personal trainer first, being a group coach, and then coming into the one-on-one aspect of nervous system training and how that just changed my perspective of how I train. And the methodology here at TPS with Ashton as our educator and Nicole and Ryan, even Hal as a client, those kinds of things I think shifted my paradigm and my mindset from, all right, not one body's the same, not one personality is the same, not one mind is the same. There's always going to be goals that person has. How are we going to attack those goals and make this program individualistic and specific to what they're trying to accomplish?
And I think something that I took away from Laverne was how that is like obviously the case, like how you talked about every single person had a specific individualistic
Mm.
training program, which
Mm.
at Laverne, that was the first time I'd ever experienced, a program that was made to every single person based upon what you could physically do. All the exercises are going to be based to what you can do, and it is specifically
Right.
for you. So that was something we took away, but also just how that was the first time I really experienced that no matter what the circumstance, no matter what the situation, you can always do something,
Mm.
right? I think a lot of programs and organizations, not organizations, I would say like programs and people think that, okay, I went through an injury, right? I can't do this anymore. But that is just simply not the case, right? If you go into the weight room and you tell Coach Durant like, "Oh, I pulled my hamstring, like I can't work out today," no, you have three other limbs. We're going to use all three of those other limbs,
Mhm.
right? You come in and oh, like my back is okay, like let's cut off the back and let's go from hip to ankle
Mhm.
and then shoulder to wrist, and we're going to do stuff with just those muscles,
Right.
or whatever the circumstance is. Like there's something that you can be doing.
Yeah.
And I think coming here, it really, really installed that to the fact that almost every single person, every single case, every single circumstance, you can be doing something, right?
Right.
We have anything from a quadriplegic who can barely move their neck to
Mhm.
somebody who is a paraplegic and you know how they have great upper extremity function. And no matter what the circumstance is, you can always do something. You can always
Right.
exercise in a particular way. And I think we all know that you're going to reap benefit from exercise.
Right. There's modifications. There's adaptiveness. That's part of our job, is being adaptive.
You're a business owner in the retail, restaurant, hospitality, or petroleum industry. You have ambitious plans for multi-site remodels, refreshing your brand, and integrating the latest technology, but you need a partner you can trust to bring those visions to life. Enter Apex Imaging Services. With a legacy dating back to 1949, we've been at the forefront of innovation and transformation for over 7 decades. From licensed general contracting in 48 states to cutting-edge tech solutions, we've got you covered. Our services include everything from interior and exterior refreshes, open and closed remodels, and technology integrations, to 3D virtual tours, data analytics, and cloud security for Fortune 500 companies. But it's not just about what we do, it's how we do it. We're dedicated to quality, value, and efficiency. We listen to your needs, tailor solutions to your goals, and deliver results on time and on budget. So whether you're planning your next remodel, seeking to enhance your brand, or embracing the digital age, Apex Imaging Services is your partner for success. Visit apeximagingservices.com to learn more. Apex Imaging Services, your vision, our expertise.
So can you speak to us a little bit about how you feel like you make a lot of the exercises for your clients adaptive, even not only just based off if they're injured or sore or hurting in one part of their body, but if that part of their body doesn't have the type of function that you're looking for in order to do an exercise, how do you modify that to make it right for them?
I think the biggest way to modify the exercises that we do in here for a particular person is you make them simple. You figure out what joint you're trying to move. You figure out the anatomical alignment of that particular joint and what muscles are supposed to be contracting in order to cause the motion that you want, whether it's, neck flexion, extension, side bending, turning, or a bicep flexion, whatever it is. You figure out the muscles that are supposed to be working, you figure out the alignment that the joint is supposed to stay in, and you figure out a way to accomplish that movement through that particular range of motion. And there are different ways that we help do that, whether it's assistance with weight or resistance bands or gravity in certain instances. If we want to initiate a particular movement, we can use different reflexes that the body has. Right? Everybody kind of knows about reflexes. You go to the doctor for a general physical and they tap your knee and you kick out, right? Well, there are other reflexes that the body has. You have pain reflexes from the nerves, like peroneal nerve. If you irritate it, right, you're going to get a reflex generally.
Right.
You have different stretch reflexes. You got the Golgi tendon organs and the spinal cord that are going to cause a muscle to contract to keep the joint in alignment, which we could go way into depth on that. But again, to keep it simple, you have different reflexes that the body will do that will initiate movement, and figuring out a way to just accomplish whatever movement you want through the correct anatomical alignment, which is again, to make things really simple, anatomical alignment. If anybody has ever seen an anatomy book, you look at the man standing there with his palms up at
mountain pose.
Right at your side, and you're standing in that position. That is what we refer to as anatomical position, which is the way the body was intended to be at rest in the proper position. So if every single bone was in its proper place at rest, that would be anatomical. And the muscles work more efficiently when you maintain the anatomical alignment. Particular muscles, there are offsets where you want to get out of that anatomical alignment to target the muscle, but generally that would be the case.
So speak to me a little bit about, you said reflexes and you mentioned pain reflex, you mentioned stretch reflex. Speak to me a little bit about how you think that those pain reflexes and stretch reflexes are different than volitional movement.
So pain reflexes or stretch reflexes are going to happen even when movement is generally not volitional, what we refer to as, or the individual doing it. If somebody is suffering from paralysis, they lack intentional or volitional movement in a particular area of the body, right? You have paraplegics where from generally the waist or belly line down, they can't move their legs. You have quadriplegics, neck area down, generally don't have movement on their own or by choice.
So just to make that clear, it's usually, that's why it's such a gray area. It's not black or white, right? It's such a gray area, but typically wherever that injury level happened on the spinal cord, on the vertebrae of the spinal cord, that region down is typically affected. Okay.
And
just for
with
the audience,
variants, they're
right.
When you get into the weeds of are they incomplete injury or a complete injury,
Right.
and what type of ASIA score they have, or all these different things, it's going to.
We could go on for hours about that.
You can, and it'll differ the amount of function that the individual has, and it is so individualistic that even still, that is just something that we really don't understand. We don't understand how somebody if two people have a complete or incomplete T6 injury, they can present very differently. And we understand that the spinal cord, the deeper you go into the gray matter or into the root of the spinal cord, the more severe. And then if you get all the way across of a sever, we call it a complete injury, and it's more severe. But again, just trying to stay out of the weeds of all of that. When somebody doesn't have volitional or intentional movement, a lot of the times reflexes will still be possible. Not in every case, because again, it is so individualistic, but you can get reflexes to occur. You can take a body through a range of motion, and if the joint is going to go too far or out of what, like almost in socket, but not really, like if a joint is getting too far, you have things called the Golgi tendon organs that are a reflex of the body to keep it safe, that are going to pull that joint back into alignment with a flexion or an activation of a particular muscle sequence. And we believe that if the body is still able to do that, even in somebody who has a incomplete spinal cord injury and they can't do it on their own, that is still the body doing a particular movement. We believe that those muscles are still firing, they're still doing something. Motor units are still being recruited to activate a muscle, and if we can get that to occur over and over again, from what we think we have learned through working out and building muscle, if you activate motor units and then you do it more and more and more, they're going to recruit more motor units. And ideally, you're going to be able to create strength, or what we believe is eventually volitional movement through a connection of the nervous system.
Right. It's a great way of putting it. Yeah, it's a great way of understanding and simplifying it too, because we don't want to make it too advanced, because there's certain things that we speak of that we haven't seen yet.
No.
Right? There's certain things in here that we haven't seen yet. Certain people, certain diagnoses, even neurological disorders that we haven't even seen yet in here. We may see them one day or another, but our goal is to use the exercise as medicine. And that's our goal. That's on our wall. And that's something that we firmly believe in, is that moving the body, exercising the body is a certain form of medicine, of providing health, not only in that physical sense, but in a mental, emotional, sometimes maybe even spiritual sense. And that's the idea here at TPS. And that kind of gets me into this next topic that we're going to talk about. But I want you to speak a bit about how each person's chair is specific to that person. How does somebody get a wheelchair? Okay, let's say somebody just had their injury happen and now they need a manual wheelchair. Let's say even if it's a quad and they need a power wheelchair. how can we make that chair specific to that person's body, the way that they feel as comfortable in that chair as they can be, but also with reducing secondary complications and making sure that they're not getting pressure sores and etc.
Okay, so the biggest thing there is I don't think everybody understands that every single chair for somebody who is living their life essentially in a chair is built for that particular person. And that's not always the case because people generally get their injury, they get put into a hospital, and then they get a hospital chair or a wheelchair that the hospital can lend them or let them use until they can either figure something out on their own or they're out of the chair or whatever the circumstance is. But ideally, every single person who suffers from a neurological injury or is living with paralysis who has to use a wheelchair to get around, that chair should be built for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the main reason is to do exactly what you talked about. It's to help limit secondary complications for occurring. You can get pressure sores. You can, the other component of it is the chair is going to work either more or less efficiently for you based upon how your body is now. So if somebody is a quadriplegic, generally they have a higher dump in the chair. And so instead of being, it would be flat like this at like a 90-degree angle, it goes down lower. So there's a little bit more curve. So they create posture better in their chair. And what that does is that it allows them to push more efficiently or stop or turn or any of those things.
And as we know, their seated balance is affected a little bit more in C-level clients, and so that dump makes it a little bit easier for them.
Definitely. They generally have less function. So there's an adaptation that you make to the chair to help them be more efficient. And the higher the injury or the more function, generally you get back to that almost neutral position so that they can still sit in a correct postural position. And the chair, it is something that they're now living in. So they're in it. If they're not sleeping, generally they're in it. So instead of just walking around and moving and doing all these different things, everything you're doing is now in the chair. And so all that time in the chair causes your body to change and have what we refer to as secondary complications or things that come up because of that new lifestyle of being in the chair so much. There are other ones that come from having the neurological injury or the spinal cord injury, but there are some that really happen because of being in the chair, like a pressure sore. You can get it from not being in a chair, but it can happen in the chair. I think in the most cases that we've seen, it's been from a chair or something that has happened with the chair. But I don't think people really understand the fact that the chair is specifically for that person, and having a chair that is made for you is going to make getting around easier. It's going to make, if you're somebody who can drive, you can make that more efficient. Getting into the car, transfers, all of these different things, the chair can help with all of that if it is a chair that is made for you, versus how much more difficult it can be when the chair is not made for you and it's just a generic model. And I think that was something that I've learned that I definitely didn't know beforehand. But it makes you think about the chair differently when you see somebody who's not in it, but they still need it. So the main thing that I think of is like flights and traveling with people who are in a chair, and you see how they're treated on the airlines, and it's like a piece of luggage, they throw it on, it goes down the little elevator thing, and all this time if it's bouncing and moving around and they have a plastic brake and you break that little piece of plastic, the rest of their trip they don't have a brake and they can't effectively use their chair. If the brake is broken, oh, no big deal, like they just have to, well, no, if their brake is broken, some people can't transfer anymore, and then you can't transfer, you no longer have a chair. That's basically like you just took somebody's legs away. And that's all from just, I think, not malevolence, just ignorance on the matter of how important a person's chair is to their ability to get around and live their life.
And sometimes that ignorance is bliss at the same time, right? Like maybe there's not enough education or knowledge that was provided from the airline companies telling them, hey, make sure that we treat this chair with respect. This is their livelihood. This is attached to their body, and it's something that they absolutely need in order to get around and maneuver, in order to live their life. And so I think that, just like you said, it's of so much importance of somebody to hopefully, ideally, be able to get a chair that is going to fit them or match them properly, and somewhere where they feel comfortable and somewhere where they feel like they can have as much independence as possible while trying to live the best quality of life, right?
Welcome to The Perfect Step, a beacon of hope for those living with paralysis. We're not just another recovery program. We're pioneers in exercise-based recovery, transforming lives every day. Our mission is clear: to provide an improved quality of life through intense exercise-based recovery, education, research, and development. We treat conditions such as spinal cord injury, stroke, Parkinson's, and more. What sets us apart? Our clients often experience an improved level of function, sometimes even below their entry level. Imagine the possibilities when exercise is medicine. We're wheelchair-free, focusing on load-bearing activities to enhance function, bone density, muscle mass, sensation, and circulation. And it doesn't stop there. Our clients often reduce their medications and complications. But we're not just a program. We're a community of support. You'll meet peers who understand your journey, along with specialists dedicated to your recovery. Visit theperfectstep.com today and take the first step toward hope, health, and healing. The Perfect Step, where recovery begins.
Because as we know, secondary complications are hard. I mean, as we know of having clients, we don't know personally, absolutely not at all.
Not saying we have any idea.
No idea personally, but as we know of being specialists and having clients and speaking of their experiences and being around them, understanding that, man, this is their livelihood. This is something that they absolutely need and they can't be without.
Absolutely not. So. And I think you talk about how important it is that a chair is specific, because every single person is so unique and individualistic. And I think you can talk a lot about how every single injury or diagnosis is individualistic, and how we've kind of learned that from training different injuries and populations. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess just going on the broad sense, I'm going to individualize my clients' goals based off what they are trying to accomplish, right? So what I'm doing for, like I said earlier, my client at 11 o'clock, I may not do the same exercises, or I may not choose the same modalities, or I may not choose the same machines as my client have at 4 o'clock, okay?
You probably won't.
Yeah, so, and the reason being is because I know that each goals of the person are different. I know each body is different. Each diagnosis is different. Each injury is different. There's so many things that go into it. But my questions that I ask of my clients initially is, what are your goals? How does your body feel? Is the very first question that we typically ask. How does your body feel today? Not yesterday, not tomorrow. How does your body feel today? Because that's something too where every time our clients come in, their body might feel different on a particular day. It's not always going to feel the same. Spasms may be different. Tightness may be different. And there's a plethora of other things that may be different. But I'm trying to individualize and specify my program, what I'm doing for that day, based off how my client's body feels, what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish in their life. Maybe if they have a pressure sore at that moment in time, maybe if they're a little extra spastic on that day, maybe if there's a little bit more tone, maybe if they're extremely tired and sore and fatigued from the day before. Who knows what the case may be. But each program is going to be specified individual for that person, because I think that that's what that person deserves based off what we've been taught, what we've been trained here at TPS, and what we've been through with our training, our in-house certification, is that we want to make sure that that person is getting the best care possible, and not only to making sure that it's for that person, but also to make sure that it's for that person and their livelihood and their family and their goals and the atmosphere that they want to be around. But I think as far as the specificity goes, it's really important to make sure that you understand and have a pretty decent, at least, understanding of what that person's body is like. Communicating to you, right? I mean, we all have certain clients sometimes, and you might have a certain client on one day and I might have that client on the next day, right? We not always just have that same client every single day. I think that's also something that's a little different, is if I have somebody on Mondays at 11, you might have them next Monday at 11 o'clock. You might have them Thursday at 4 o'clock. Who knows? But it's about the communication and how we can make sure that we're on the same page on attacking that person's goals, so that way they can be as successful as possible.
And it's so important, I think, because of all the things we said, on how every single injury, every single case is so individualistic and unique that nobody is going to have the same day twice.
Yeah.
Every single day, every single session is going to be different because of the fact that their body is going to be different.
Right.
And I think that the fact that our training tries to accommodate for that in a way is very beneficial for us and the way we think about the process of how the body and the mind are connected and how we can use that connection to accomplish different things, but also for them, because some days their body may really need, just some TLC. They may need to just have a more relaxed session where they just want to focus on letting their body feel good again. If you're living the life in a chair, and I'm not saying that we have any idea how this is, but there are days when we have clients who they're just in pain and their body just hurts and they really just want to feel good. And sometimes the only goal of a session can be just to make them have less pain and make their body feel better. Or it could be to maybe loosen their hips up or decrease their spasticity so that because they have something to go do later that day, they can now accomplish that.
Right.
Whether it's they need to go to work for the rest of the week and they want to do something that's going to allow for that work week to be more efficient or more relaxed on the body, or whatever the circumstance.
They want to sleep better that night.
They want to sleep better. Yeah. Whatever it is.
Right.
If you have a predetermined exercise regimen or routine that is just, okay, you come in and you're going to do this, if their body is different on that given day, it's not going to be as efficient. And it could not be they need, and you're not going to be productive in a way. It could be almost detrimental if, you come in or a client comes in and they have this idea of what you want to be done or what you want to have done or what they want to do, and their body isn't allowing for that to occur in an efficient way, then changing that is going to be more productive for you and their body. And I think trying to accommodate for that in the sessions is just a really big part of why the methodology that we've seen is proactive.
It's huge. Yeah, it's very important. I think that kind of ties along with neuroplasticity and osteocalcin, because that's the next topic that you're going to talk about. And those things are also specific to each person too. Somebody's neuroplasticity, and maybe we can kind of go a little brief explanation of that, and osteocalcin. Somebody's bone density, which is in relation to osteocalcin. Somebody's ability to regain nervous system connection, which is essentially a part of neuroplasticity, is not going to be the same from person to person. That recovery is not going to be the same process, whether it's somebody that got injured 1 year ago or 10 years ago. Those two cases are going to be completely different. That person that 1 year might see different neuroplasticity changes. That person the 10 year might see complete different neuroplasticity changes. And those changes may still occur. I think sometimes there is a little bit of a rumor that within the first 2 years after your injury, that's when you see the most amount of progress. I don't think that is a fact. And the reason being is because we have had so many people in the building, so many clients that have still seen progress, that are still continuing to see progress and get stronger 10 years post-injury diagnosis.
Definitely. I think that the majority of it, there is potential that it could happen that close to injury. But to say that there's going to be none after that 2-year period, like, once that 2-year marker's up, like, you're not going to have any more potential benefit. You're definitely not going to be able to strengthen your nervous system connection or increase your neurological connection to your lower extremities. And when we say neuroplasticity, again, to keep it simple, we're not experts in the field. We're not somebody who has done all this research or claiming to be the people who know the most about it. So to keep it, again, simple, neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to create neurological connections. And somebody who has a spinal cord injury, a lot of the times we think that that's obviously a lot harder because of the disconnect in the spinal cord. We think and have seen that it is still possible, and we're not saying that in every single case that you can strengthen it and gain the ability to walk again or to do particular things, but we do think that there is the ability to help neuroplasticity occur through exercise. And we have seen that there are potential benefits out there from neuroplasticity. And when we talk about that, it's a very wide range of things that can happen with neuroplasticity, because when you talk about neurons growing, it can be very, very short or very, very long. And with a spinal cord injury, a lot of the times when people talk about neuroplasticity, there's axonal rooting, or just like the spreading of axons to closer axons, or there's long distance axonal regeneration. And the long distance is very important, but it also has to be long distance and targeted to a particular region in order for something like walking to occur again. Right? So you have to be able to go from the brain down the spinal cord, past that gap, which going past the gap is obviously very, very hard, but like critical if you want walking to occur again in somebody with a spinal cord injury. And it has to be targeted to a particular region to get that sequence of actions to occur that you're wanting, whether it's the muscular contractions that are causing the joint to move, whatever it is. You have to have that targeted regeneration. And we are not ever going to claim that the methodology is going to definitely make that occur.
Or cure anything.
Or cure anything. But I think that, just creating neuroplasticity and allowing for axonal sprouting to occur is still going to always be good. I think there's still always the potential that they are going to be targeted in a long distance, but we just don't know yet. There hasn't been enough research on this particular type of training and sequencing that we do that we really don't know yet. And I think that's a big thing that me and you talk about a lot, is there's a lot of stuff in this field that we don't know. And we're not claiming to know everything. We are just two people who had a fascination with the body, how the brain works, how the body and the brain work together, that have been allowed to be in a program where we get to use something else we love, of exercise, to learn more about that brain-body connection. And we've found that in doing so, we also get to help people along the way, which has been great. But we're definitely not claiming to know everything about it. And I think that's the great part, is we get to continue to learn every single day. And we do that through training people and getting hands-on experience, trying to research into our field and learn from different experts or different people in different fields of, we try to learn about physiology, we try to learn about physical therapy, occupational therapy, all these different things. And one of the things that you wanted me to touch on was osteocalcin, and that's something that I just stumbled upon from trying to learn from other people, right? I was listening to a podcast of Andrew Huberman, and he started talking about this hormone osteocalcin and what it does, how it's released, and found out, it's, released from the bones. Well, something that a lot of spinal cord injuries have affected is the bone health, bone density. Osteocalcin is something that is produced through the bones when we do what we have found a lot of times is load-bearing exercise. And I was like, whoa, that's a part of our methodology. Like, what else can this lead to, And he started talking about osteocalcin's ability in instances of what we thought, or what we think, is it helping neuroplasticity. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? How does that, and how do those connect? And just looking more into it about, okay, well, now we know that osteocalcin, something that happens from load-bearing exercise, can help neuroplasticity. Like, okay, how do we incorporate this into the training? And just being in the field and being allowed to learn all of these different things is just so cool and so interesting. But again, I think the best part of it is we are not like these foregone experts of any, like and I think a lot of the people that have watched or listened to the podcast kind of talk about that, is like, when we meet you guys, like, you're kind of different on the podcast. You're so uptight, you're so professional. It's like, we do want to try to maintain a sense of professionalism, but also try to like be your guys' selves. We're kind of goofy around the facility. We try to make people smile. We try to make people laugh. We try to keep it entertaining and lighthearted for sure, especially when it can definitely get heavy on the heart in some instances. And so just trying to reiterate that, we're really just two people who like to learn, got into an opportunity where we can learn about a topic that we both had interest in, and both had connections to wanting to help people, and just got kind of really lucky with that.
Yeah, it's very well said, all of that. Thank you for sharing that. I think that goes in relation to our non-cookie cutter approach as well. And not just having a cookie cutter approach to where it's this way or it's this way that works or it's that way that works. Like, we are able to have the creativity in this job to try multiple different things to see what works best for that client. And like you said, there's certain things that there potentially are not enough research on, and that there hasn't just been enough time for that research. And so it's still ongoing every single day. And we're still figuring things out to this day. We're lifelong learners in that sense where we're always trying to learn, or always trying to get to the next best thing, always trying to do the best for the clients. And I think that that's where we have been able to see some results, is being able to have TPS be around for a few amount of years, to where we've learned from other specialists along the way. We've learned from educators along the way that have shown, hey, this worked for that client. Let's try this out. Even though they're not the same person, let's try this out and let's see how that approach may happen or may help.
For sure. And I think that was huge for us that, two people who wanted to learn. Well, we got in a position where we got to learn a lot from a lot of different people who had already been doing this for a good amount of years, right? Talk about like Jason. He's somebody who's been doing it for doing this
17
type
years.
of neurological training on people with neurological injuries, specifically spinal cord, for 16 years.
Yeah.
And it's like all the things he's seen and all the things that he's learned, and his ability to now understand and comprehend what the body is trying to do when the nervous system is trying to do it, and how to manipulate the body in a particular way to get the outcome that you want. Like, we just got to latch on and learn so much in such a short amount of time that it feels, awesome, but it's also
free.
Like, it was free. And also it's like, well, if we got to learn that much and that's what he learned in 16 years, like how do we learn more? How do we try to, do what he did so that we can help the next generation? And how do we incorporate the resources we have now that he may not have had into making that process exponential and a lot quicker? And I think that, again, that just kind of goes back to the desire to try to help people that we have. And, it's, again, why we started the podcast. We have been lucky enough to come into these pieces of information that we think could help a lot of people, and we just didn't think that there was a resource where they could find it. And so trying again to just provide something to somebody so that they can learn from our experiences as we were able to do from other people's experiences.
Right, and pass on that knowledge, hopefully. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's something that is super important. All right, well, Cody, thank you so much for sharing all your expertise, man, and all your knowledge. It's a blessing to be on this podcast with you, and hopefully be able to provide some sort of educational resource to a lot of people out there that are listening.
Yeah, thank you for all of your knowledge and all of your expertise and your continual desire to help as many people as you can along the way, and the betterment of helping yourself by learning and trying to push forth everything that you've learned for other people. And I can't wait to dive more into the weeds of things on our second episode of Just Me and You, where we can talk about where the field of recovery, in our opinions, could potentially be going. We don't know the facts for sure. I don't think anybody does, but I'm pretty excited for that. So
you heard him. Stay tuned, guys. Part 2. We'll be back. Until then, keep rolling on Pathways to Healing. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Pathways to Healing, the Perfect Step podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did.
If you found today's episode to be valuable, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, and feel free to leave a review by clicking the link in the description below.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or topics you'd like for us to cover in upcoming episodes, you can go to our website under the tab Pathways to Healing and fill out the form.
We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another engaging conversation giving insight into the paralysis community.
Until then, keep inspiring, stay resilient, and roll on.
These are your hosts, Cody Norman
and Logan Frye,
signing off.